spiritual bent. It might be where you
Judith Ann Still, the composer's daughter, and an admirer and follower of the activities of our congregation, sends this greeting. In the Creator's plan to perfect the human personality, the required responses to inhumanity are grief, empathy, and the progress towards universal love. It is well to find gatherings in which human darkness is acknowledged and converted to understanding. Thank you for this service, which moves us all toward the ultimate goal, affection for all humans as family. God bless my friends in the Unitarian Church.
And now a little tune written especially for me, Strange Fruit. Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rock, for the tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter cry.
Good morning and welcome to our Sunday service. My name is Carol Lascalzo and I am a member here at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood and co-chair with Carolyn Musser of the Racial Justice team. As always, I offer a heartfelt thank you to the team that puts together the Sunday service each week. The Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has been gathering for over a century to build community, deepen our relationships to ourselves and others, further justice, and learn to live with love in the world. All while we ask questions together about the nature of the world and our place in it as human beings. Here we affirm all people, no matter their age, sexual orientation, education, history, race, ethnicity, economic status, mental or physical health, gender, or body. Here we understand that we are one family connected to the earth and everything in existence. Here we understand that love has the power to heal and transform us all. If this is your first time visiting, welcome. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can get connected to our weekly emails, check our website, or contact Ann, our congregational administrator, at usrmembership1@gmail.com. We would also love for you to fill out the Google form being dropped in the chat so we can follow up with you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Come, take a deep breath and listen. Let the sound that rings out be a source of comfort in difficult times, a source of strength when we feel our own begin to waver. A reminder of all that is possible when we strive toward our highest ideals and stay true to our most deeply held principles. Come, listen.
Please join us in the words for lighting the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community.
I first want to remember that our congregational space sits on the original land of Native people, the Wolf and Turkey clans of the Lenape, and our neighbors in Ringwood, New Jersey, the Turtle clan of the Ramapo Lenape tribe. These lands were stolen or taken by deceit from these Native people. I also want to remember that we are all beneficiaries of the forced labor of enslaved Africans. Offering this service this morning provides several unique opportunities for us. Most of our racial justice team members were totally unaware of the Tulsa massacre that took place on May 31st and June 1st, 1921. Most of us were horrified about what had been called incorrectly a race riot and is now called a massacre. The Greenwood section of Tulsa was a thriving Black community. It was the largest of many such communities throughout the country and was known as Black Wall Street. Between May 31st and June 1st, a young white teen woman accused an African-American teen of grabbing her arm in an elevator. The man was arrested and police launched an investigation. A mob of armed white men gathered outside the Tulsa County Courthouse where gunfire ensued. Airplanes were used to drop firebombs on people and buildings. During the violence, 1,250 homes were destroyed and roughly 6,000 African Americans were imprisoned after the Oklahoma National Guard was called in. Over the years, there have been widely contradictory estimates of the number of African Americans and whites who died, with African Americans having significantly higher numbers than whites. People ask, why was there silence for almost 100 years? The Tulsa Riot Commission stated in its final report in February 2001, and I am now quoting from a teacher who had been a high school student in 1921, the riot isn't known much to young teachers. Many were born after the riot, and it was banned by book publishers as much as U.S. history about Blacks and slavery was banned. I could teach a course on just what has been left out of history. He goes on, why the silence in our community? Blacks lost everything. They were afraid. It could happen again, and there was no way to tell the story. The 2 Negro newspapers had been bombed. They were too busy just trying to make it. These events raise important issues relevant today. Why are some events in American history been hidden? How might they be included in social studies classes and college courses now? Do events like these strengthen the call for reparations? And much more, as you will hear. Today's service permits us to introduce to you a prominent Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Dr. Marlin Lavanhar, the senior minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa. He has roots in this congregation, which he attended with his family before he went to Divinity School. You will hear more about Marlin later from his dad, Marlin Lavanhar. We genuinely thank Marlin for letting us present his May 30th, 2021 service, remembering 1921.
When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the world is tossing me like a ship upon the sea, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me. In the midst of tribulation, stand by me. In the midst of tribulation, stand by me. When the host of hell assail and my strength begins to fail, thou who never lost a battle, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by best I can, and my friends misunderstand. Thou who knowest all about me, stand by me. In the midst of persecution, stand by me. Oh, yes, yes. In the midst of persecution, stand by me. When my foes in battle array, undertake to stop my way. Thou who saved Paul and Silas, oh, thou lily of the valley, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me.
Hello, my name is Jack Lohr. I am a member of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. Each week, we receive an offering to support the work of the church, and through the summer, we are sharing the plate with organizations whose mission we support. During July and August, our Share the Plate contributions will be split 50-50 to the Center for Food Action in Mahwah. The work they do during the summer serves people whose needs are greater during the summer. We will be sharing with you the instructions on how to give. Let me put that up for you. Let's see. There we go. Yes. Aha.
In the chat, Jack.
There we go. Okay, you'll find it in the chat. Sorry about that. This is our contribution to the Center for Food Action, and this is the way you can give. If you don't want to do it digitally, you can contribute by mailing a check to 113 Cottage Place in Ridgewood, New Jersey, 07450. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
For the reading, we will hear from 3 survivors of the Tulsa massacre who recently testified before Congress. Viola Fletcher Hughes, age 107, Leslie Benningfield Randall, age 106, and Hughes Van Ellis, age 100.
I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot.
It was like a war. White men with guns came and destroyed my community. We couldn't understand why. What did we do to them? We didn't understand. We were just living, but they came and they destroyed everything. They burned houses and businesses. They just took what they wanted and out of the building. Then they burned the building, burned them. They murdered people. We were told they just dumped the dead bodies into the river. I remember running outside of our house. I just passed dead bodies. It wasn't a pretty sight. I still see it today in my mind 100 years later.
You may have been taught that when something is stolen from you, you can go to the courts to be made whole. You can go to the courts to get justice. This wasn't the case for us. The courts in Oklahoma wouldn't hear us. The federal courts said we were too late. We were made to feel that our struggle was unworthy of justice, that we were less valued than whites, that we weren't fully Americans. We were shown that in the United States, not all men were equal under law. We were shown that when black voices called out for justice, no one cared. Please do not let me leave this earth without justice, like all the others, massacre survivors. Thank you so much.
Some of you here may remember Marlin spent almost 2 years with us here in Ridgewood in the mid-90s, just before starting Divinity School. And almost immediately after Divinity School graduation, he was called by All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to be their senior minister, the largest church in our denomination. And 12 years ago, in an unheard of move, All Souls merged with a predominantly Black Pentecostal church to become a truly integrated congregation, certainly influenced by Marlin's work in the civil rights movement. As the youngest member at Prairie Group, an annual gathering of ministers, Marlin was asked once to give a paper on the future of our denomination. The members were accustomed to receiving well-documented work, and he was criticized for not being scholarly enough. He replied to the critic, "I wasn't asked to do scholarly, I was asked to do visionary, and visionary he definitely is." In 2000, his first year at Tulsa, Marlin started up the reparations movement for what was called at the time the 1921 Tulsa riots. He approached the task with vision, a lasting passion, and an eye toward promotion by saying it was not a riot, it was a massacre. It was a massacre, and that's what it's finally called 100 years after it took place. As Marlin's career developed and he became better known, people would approach me with the stock phrase, "You must be so proud of your son." I finally came up with my own stock reply. I just say, it sure is fun being part of Marlin's life. And it is. You are about to find out why I say that.
We all need somebody to stand by us at different points in our lives. Some of you have stood by me. I know I've stood by you. Right now, as we commemorate 100 years of the 1921 race massacre, I hope we will all stand by the survivors and the descendants in the community of Greenwood. I've been trying my best to stand by the community and the survivors for 21 years now, since coming to Tulsa and hearing about what happened and seeing the official report of the Race Riot Commission that our state put together, and seeing that all those diverse people called for reparations for the survivors and the descendants as absolutely important to rectify and remedy the situation. So I've been out there trying to do my best to stand with them. And just this month, I've had a really unique opportunity through a collaboration with Nehemiah Frank and the Black Wall Street Times, the digital media company that recognizes that access to information is the new human right. And so I've been collaborating, using some of my cartooning. One of my hobbies is doing these cartoons, and I've been doing a series on the race massacre with a column. So a cartoon with a column that describes some of the backstory and some of the history, which has been really, I've been taken by the response, the comments, the shares, people sharing them all over the country and talking about these things. And it's a way that through an image and a short few paragraphs to be able to transmit what happened and hopefully help people understand why reparations makes a lot of sense and is the right thing to do. So I want to share maybe 16 or 15 of the cartoons with you this morning and just give you walk you through the basic story and the meaning behind each one. And I hope that's an engaging way for you to understand. So what happened, of course, there was an incident in an elevator between two youth, one African-American male and a white woman. It was a busy time. It was Memorial Day. There were people all over the city. It seems absolutely crazy that any person would try to attack somebody in such a public place with so many people all around. So truly, it's been understood that this was just a sensationalized story that was told that this black male tried to assault. They used the word assault in the front page newspaper article in the Tulsa Tribune, the evening paper. So people are coming coming out of work on May 31st, or coming out whatever they were doing in the evening, and this article came out. And I want to show you the first cartoon. It shows a white newspaper boy hawking newspapers in downtown Tulsa saying, "Nab a Negro, nab a Negro, nab a Negro, read all about it." You know, and it was this telling this sensationalized, inaccurate story about this black male trying to rape, because the word assault meant rape back then, a white woman on an elevator. It was crazy. It created fear. It created hysteria among the white community and fear among the black community. In fact, the next cartoon in the series is of a young black, the sort of black counterpart to this young white male, bringing a newspaper home, front page article showing people coming back to Greenwood from work, maybe shining shoes or whatever he was doing in downtown Tulsa, to say, look, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to Dick Rowland, the young man? Is he going to be lynched, as we saw happening all across the country in that era? Is there going to be a race, what they used to call race riot, which was actually an act of mob violence and terrorism by white people against black communities? We saw Red Summer just 18 months earlier. You saw in 36 towns and cities across America, both North and South, where you saw mass killings of black people by white mobs. This was happening across the country, and to have this in the newspaper, folks knew on all sides of town something was going to happen, and there was a lot of fear and anger, and all of that was happening. So I want to just show you the third cartoon in that series, which is a pencil saying fake news and bringing a flame in and lighting the spark that burned down Greenwood, this incredible black community known as Black Wall Street. It was an incredible economy. They had movie theaters and doctors' offices, law offices, drug stores, candy stores, everything you could imagine, and homes. And so this article, this lie in the paper, sensationalized to sell papers, was the spark that brought this together. So you had a mob of white people forming outside the jail, because they did nab the Negro, Dick Rowland. He was taken and brought in for questioning at the police station. And so a white mob formed. There was talk of a lynching, fear of a lynching. You had then black World War I veterans who put on their uniforms and their government issue rifles, and they came in lockstep to the jail and the courthouse and said to the chief of police, "We will stand with you to protect, to make sure Dick Rowland is not lynched, that he has his day in court if he's going to be arrested, and we just want to make sure that he's safe." And they came very orderly, but one from the white mob tried to grab a rifle away from one of the black veterans. There was a tug back and forth. A gun went off. No one knows the first shot where it came from, but all of a sudden, all hell broke loose in Tulsa. The chief of police started to deputize over 200 white people from this mob of vigilantes, giving weapons and telling them to help, and they were going to go and try to clean up Greenwood, or however they understood that. So the next cartoon is a picture when you see these white men with their weapons making their way across town. One of them is saying, "Wait, isn't this illegal?" And another one says, "No, we're deputized." And I wanted this cartoon, and the commentary that goes with it explains this wasn't some random mob of hateful racists that just formed out of nowhere and just did this. These were folks with real government authority behind them. They were deputized, sworn in by the city employee, the chief of police. And so this was an organized effort that had the backing of the official authority of the state. And so that's why the issue of reparations around the city's responsibility and the state's responsibility to repair the damage that those in their service created. That's one of the important arguments. The next cartoon shows a burning church. Now, this and the cartoon of the pencil, the fake news pencil, these were drawn on top of historic postcards from 1921. After the massacre, photographs of the destruction of Greenwood were turned into postcards and sent by white people all over the country, either to brag about what happened or just to show people what happened. And so I took some of these postcards, which told a particular story in 1921, and I drew over the top of them to tell a counter narrative, a new story, if you will. In this one, you see Mount Zion Church burning, and it says, how white Christians justified burning down of black churches. Because how is it that these white folks, supposedly Christians, who can burn down a fellow church in the community? Well, they did it. You could see at the bottom. This was the original text from the postcard. It said, burning of a church where a munition was stored during the race riot in 1921. Well, let me tell you, there were no munitions stored in any churches. There's no evidence of that. That was a story that white people told to justify the burning down of all of these churches. In the cartoon, I put in there the real reason and give some multiple choice: fear, hatred, the devil, all of the above. The next cartoon is another one that is drawn right on top of one of these historic photograph postcards. And it shows they marched, these vigilantes, these deputies marched over almost 10,000 black people out of their home, got them out of their homes, marched them through the streets to 3 different detention centers, concentration camps, if you will, and with their hands up through the street. So in this cartoon, I show you see a man with a child, because we don't think about the children and the impact and the trauma on these children, who were many in Greenwood at the time. He's saying, one man's saying, tell me again why you fought for America. He's talking to a World War I veteran being marched through the streets. And he said, of course, freedom from tyranny. I thought, they went overseas to fight to end tyranny for freedom for America, but then in America, they weren't even free. And then they're being marched through the streets at gunpoint in their own hometown with their hands up, taken away from their property. And so the next cartoon talks about the looting of Greenwood. The homes were looted. They stole silverware, jewelry, clothes, furniture, cars. This stuff was all looted and taken out by the mob. So folks lost all that. Other people gained from that loss. White people who stole these things, some of them deputized by the state. So in this cartoon, it says the looting of Greenwood, and it shows these kids saying to their mom, where'd you get all that nice new jewelry? And of course, the father with his guns, the vigilante character, saying, don't ask, right? Don't ask where she got that jewelry. In the next one, another one painted on top of a historic photograph, it shows the scene of just some of the mass destruction. 35 full city blocks, more than that, destroyed completely. And this young boy, again, wanting to bring the children in, wanting to humanize the story. So he's saying, Mama, why do they hate us? How the children had to make sense of this. The parents had to explain to their children, what do they say about white people? How did they try to explain how something like this could happen? I still wonder what could be said. And how the impacts of all of this continues to play out in our time. In the next cartoon, I show the green cards, the police protection card. It says, I survived a race massacre and all I got was this lousy card. The only thing the city of Tulsa has ever given to those who survived this incredible crime against humanity that happened in this city was a little green piece of paper. If they were taken to one of the 3 detention centers, then in order to get out, a white person had to vouch for them and say, oh, they work for me, I know them, they are so-and-so. And if you had a white person come and vouch for you, then they would sign this card. You would have it said police protection, and black people were walking around Tulsa with these cards pinned to their shirts for days, and it showed the white community this was a good Negro. They've been vouched for by a white person that they're a good Negro. They didn't cause any of this stuff. You can trust them and protect them. But if you were black and you were walking around Tulsa without one of those green cards taped to your lapel, you were in danger of being attacked, arrested, or otherwise getting into trouble. It was, you can imagine what an awful time. Also, the fact that they were able to create 3 detention centers, move 10,000 people to those detention centers, and create 7,500 cards with an official, signing in and out, all that stuff was able to happen in this short span of hours that the massacre happened. It does make one wonder what kind of pre-planning had already been done. It just doesn't seem like something that just exploded overnight in a 12 to 16-hour period of time. How does all that happen? How does all that coordination happen? That's why there's a lot of talk about this being more than just a random act of mob violence. The next cartoon deals with the issues of Christianity and spirituality that we don't talk about enough in this city. And that is, it shows the white church on one side of the railroad tracks and a black church on the other side of the railroad tracks the Sunday after the massacre. 4 days, the embers still burning from the massacre, and you have white preachers. And we have the texts of these sermons from major churches in downtown Tulsa, white churches, saying the most, what we would absolutely say are the racist terms about the black community, about Greenwood, justifying the killing and the destruction and justifying the actions of white people in the community, blaming the black community, even blaming white people who treated black people as equals during that time for giving black people the idea that maybe they're equal, which then sparked them to try to, say, protect Dick Rowland or what have you. So in this cartoon, the white preacher is saying, the Negroes rioted because some foolish whites treated them like equals and give them these ideas. This is quoted from an actual sermon, and we know this didn't come from God. We know this didn't come from the Holy Spirit, so I have the devil whispering those words into the preacher's ears. I think we have to have a reckoning with the fact that Christian pastors in major pulpits around this city were preaching evil in the name of Jesus and in the name of God on the Sunday following this massacre, and I don't know for how much longer, but we know the Christian church has to have a reckoning. The white Christian church is still with race, its involvement with slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and other things. Of course, the black preachers on the other side of the tracks trying to comfort traumatized people, survivors who have been through so much, lost lives, property, everything, homeless, all the rest of it. And of course, saying the words from the Bible, Jesus whispering in his ear, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." The incredible forgiveness that we've seen coming out of the black church and the black community time and time again through incredible atrocity and violence and terrorism of that community has been astonishing. And I think it was Cornel West who said every white person, every time a black person walks by white folks, they should stand up and give them a standing ovation for the fact that we've never had an intifada in this community, in this country, that black people have never risen up to try to fight back through violence and guerrilla warfare or anything else, but have always continued to maintain dignity and through the church and through taking the higher ground. And it's time for us all to respond in a way that brings the community together. The next cartoon is about the insurance companies, which gave nothing. Folks had been paying their premiums for years. They lost their homes, their businesses, and everything, and they said, sorry. In the cartoon, he says, you people caused this riot, so your policy is void. Of course, the black man saying, who people caused this riot? What? But they blamed it on the black community, the city leaders, the media, and others, and the clergy and others, even in the courts. And so insurance companies took the money and ran, right? They've continued to build wealth on the wealth that they had not paid back to those who deserved it by blaming them for the destruction of their own community. That's something that hasn't been rectified, and another issue as it comes to reparations. And you can imagine a black male in this situation, in this cartoon, actually yelling out in anger in that situation, because a black person could not yell out in anger and express themselves fully in front of a white person in that time in America without, again, more violence or terror happening against that person. The layers of this are deep, and we need to just be honest about them and talk about them. The next cartoon shows a police lineup. It's called Tulsa Massacre Cold Case, 1921 to 2021. For 100 years, the police have been sitting on a cold case of mass murder in the streets of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and nobody has been arrested or held accountable. You can see, so that's why they're just outlines of people, not the actual people. And he's saying, strange thing, in 100 years, we haven't been able to find anyone who fits these descriptions. And you have the vigilante character, you have a police officer, you have someone in a KKK hood, you have clergy, you have pilots, because planes were involved in this massacre and destruction of Greenwood, and you have judges with their gavels. It took a bunch of systems and communities working together to cover this up and to hold nobody accountable for such mass violence. The next cartoon is about the school system. It says, what public schools taught about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre for 90 of the past 100 years? And it's a blank sheet of paper. People were not taught. The school system hid it. It wasn't in the textbooks. People learned history of Oklahoma, did not learn anything about this. When I posted this, the comments, hundreds and hundreds of comments of people of all generations who grew up in Tulsa and Oklahoma talking about, I never learned it, I didn't know it, this is when I first learned it. It was incredible. People, it still boggles my mind that so in order to blame the victims of a massacre for the massacre, and then to cover it up and hold nobody accountable, and then to create a conspiracy of silence where nobody talked about it, you had to have the media, you had to have the school system, you had to have the courts, you had to have the politicians, you had to have a lot of systems conspiring to create that kind of a conspiracy of silence, cover up. And those are the things that we need to still reckon with, the systemic level of this. Again, this wasn't just a bunch of angry white people who went in and did this and shocked everybody else. There were a lot of folks involved before, during, and for a long time afterward. The next cartoon shows the 4 different points at which this destruction of Greenwood happened. 1921, the massacre, of course. 1971, when urban renewal came in. A lot of people don't know that Black Wall Street was rebuilt. It was rebuilt. It was stronger than ever before. Following that, going into the 30s and 40s and 50s. And it wasn't until 1971 that the city decided through urban renewal to put highways right through the center of the Greenwood business district. And they bought up a bunch of homes and businesses. They destroyed the district once and for all because you put a permanent obstruction to the recreation of Greenwood. And that did away with Greenwood. The last straw was in 1991 when the University Center at Tulsa was created, and we put in universities there, and again bought up homes and businesses, and now all the land, almost all of the blocks, the 35 square blocks, are now owned by the city and by the university system. So the idea of rebuilding Greenwood at this point is almost impossible. But the other thing was there are vacant lots. You'll see them all throughout. So a lot of this land is not even being used. The city owns them. The university system owns some, but this is an opportunity to give back some of that land potentially. That's one of the moves to help recreate some businesses in the Greenwood district. That's something I hope we're going to be talking about. And of course, in 2021, you have the city owns, or the university system owns, or other, now the properties that are being developed are all owned, as I understand it, by white people. There was an article in the Atlantic that talks about this, and the Washington Post, that there might be some black stores in some of these places, but they're all owned by white owners who are making the money off of these properties. So the takeover of Greenwood 100 years later has been completed in many ways, unless we do something significant as a city to redress the situation. The last two, in this second to last cartoon, I show the Tower of Reconciliation, which is a beautiful 3-story monument in brass in Tulsa to recognize the massacre. And it starts with the Trail of Tears at the bottom, and then it moves up to slavery and emancipation, and eventually Greenwood and the massacre. And it's the idea is that it goes all the way up to reconciliation and liberation at the top. And so where are we in this process? And it shows in the cartoon that where white people think we are, reconciliation, the stage many white people think Tulsa is in now, and a woman's waving a sign, yay, us. And we see a lot of this now around the centennial. Aren't we great? We're reconciling. We're in a great place as a city. And then the other arrow shows truth and repair, the stage that most everyone else is still waiting for Tulsa to get to. We're just starting to tell the story. There's still a lot of truth telling to be told, and the repair work, the reparations, the development, the reckoning with what happened, even apologies that still haven't happened yet. And so the final cartoon in this series this morning is the cartoon that I call the Justice League. And these are black leaders. These are just a sample of black leaders who've come forward. We're so fortunate in this city to have amazing black leadership, both in publishing. You have Nehemiah Frank from the Black Wall Street Times doing amazing work. You got Greg Robinson in the green, who is a community activist, works for Met Cares, doing amazing work. Tiffany Crutcher, whose brother, Terrence Crutcher, was killed. Dr. Tiffany Crutcher is continuing the work of the Tulsa community, the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, and is somebody who is an organizer and doing amazing things in this community. Next to her, like Superman coming in, is Dr. Robert Turner of Vernon AME Church, a great friend and colleague who has really been the captain of the effort for reparations from the religious community of Tulsa. And I'm so honored to stand by his side. Of course, we have Vanessa Hall Harper, to District 1, our city councilor, who has been a staunch advocate. And then we have Demario Solomon Simmons in the Black Panther outfit, and he is the lawyer who's working with the survivors and descendants to try to get reparations in the courts. So from all these different fields, we've got amazing, brilliant, talented black leaders. There's others I could have in here. Reverend Gerald Davis could be in here. Regina Goodwin up at the state legislature could be in here, and many others. But this is my close team of friends and colleagues doing the justice work, and I'm honored to be a part of it, and I hope you'll be a part of it, and I hope we as a city will do the right thing, maybe become a model for other cities around the country and around the world for how do you take what's happened in the past, and when you really have the opportunity to do the right thing, to redress it, and to sew the fabric of the community back together, and to move forward together as one Tulsa and one city. I'm glad All Souls is a part of it, and I hope you will continue to support me and support this effort. 100 years later. Amen.
I was born by the river in a little town, and oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know that a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. See, I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me, boy, don't you hang around. you see, I go to my brother. I say, brother, can you help me, please? But he winds up, oh, he winds up knocking me right back on my knees. Oh, there's been times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming. I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Said it's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.